Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Police have laid charges in connection with a 33-year-old man being shot at a tent encampment in Lethbridge. The 4 men being charged with conspiracy to commit murder at the Coutts border blockade earlier this year will stand trial next June. And members of a Christian group who were forced to leave their homes in Ukraine are now in Hungary bringing the gospel of Christ to many young people.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge police have charged a 37-year-old Lethbridge man in connection with a shooting at one of our city's tent encampment sites. Nathan Parker, Spear Chief, faces a wide variety of charges, including aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, and discharge of a firearm with the intent to endanger life. A 33-year-old man was shot in the leg. He was taken to hospital, treated, and has since been released. Spear Chief remains in custody awaiting his bail hearing. Now, the tent encampment set up by Civic Centre Park was set to be torn down, but has since been postponed by the City of Lethbridge. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, the decision to delay the teardown follows that shooting on Sunday night.
If there's a direct threat to anybody here, I want to know about it, and we'll certainly deal with it. But if it's just an appearance that people don't like, or if it's, they don't like the idea of these people camping here, that's two different things, right?
The tent site is located right behind the Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization at Civic Centre Park. Rob Miyashiro, the executive director of the LSCO, says the tent encampment situation is evolving daily.
I mean, we don't like the look of it. No one does. But if it's really not affecting us in a real way, then maybe we need to just let the people that are in authority do what they need to do to deal with it.
The Lethbridge Police Service charged Nathan Parker, Spear Chief, with a wide range of offences after a man was shot on Sunday evening at the tent site. Acting Staff Sergeant for the LPS Criminal Investigations Unit, Bruce Hagel, says the organization doesn't monitor tent encampments within the city unless they're called to them.
And a lot of times we respond where we get asked to go when there's complaints that get made and complaints that come in. And certainly the encampments, I know it's been a focus, but it's not specifically been a focus of us.
Miyashiro went on to say that there needs to be affordable housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing to help our city's most vulnerable.
But all these things roll together. The social supports that people need, the feeling that they have a chance to survive.
A sign was set up on Monday that said the tent encampment would be removed in 48 hours. The City of Lethbridge says the sign has since been taken away and the decision to remove the tent site has been postponed. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The 4 men accused of conspiring to kill RCMP officers during the Coutts border protest in January and February will be standing trial next June. The trial of Chris Lysak, Anthony Oleanic, Jerry Morin, and Chris Carbert will last 3 weeks beginning June 12th of 2023. The accused face numerous charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, and mischief by impeding the lawful use of property. The charges stem from alleged offences in the village of Coutts during the border protests, where police confiscated a number of weapons, including long guns, handguns, ammunition, and a machete. Alberta RCMP are looking for witnesses of a crash east of Airdrie on Sunday that killed a youth. Mounties say the driver of an eastbound hatchback was trying to overtake a pickup truck pulling a trailer when it hit the back of the trailer. They say the impact caused the car to leave the roadway and collide with a power pole that caught fire, which spread to the vehicle. Police say a youth in one of the hatchback's back seats died at the scene. If you have any information that can help police with their investigation, please call Crime Stoppers right away. The province says it is changing how people are tested for COVID-19. Beginning next week, Albertans who need a PCR test must have a referral from a healthcare professional. Clinicians will determine the best testing option for patients, which could include rapid testing at home or in a clinic. Doctors will also be required to request lab tests on their patients' behalf while using the AHS online appointment booking system. Health Minister Jason Copping says the changes will allow the province to focus its testing capacity on those who are most at risk. Well, it was quite the hot sunny day here in Lethbridge, and that trend is expected to continue for the next few days. Medical Officer of Health for AHS South Zone, Dr. Vivian Suttorp, offered some tips to beat the summer heat. She says to wear sunscreen of at least SPF 30, stay hydrated with water, and to avoid prolonged exposure in the sun. She also explains how to recognize the signs of heat injury.
People may feel fatigued, some nausea, vomiting, headache, sweating, clammy skin. If you recognized in a loved one or a friend, get them under a tree, get them under in a cooler building, etc., so that they can cool off and ensure that they're hydrated. This can progress and sometimes pretty quickly to heat stroke. That's actually when people stop sweating. They can lose consciousness. They can even have seizures and or die.
Dr. Suttorp adds that there are 3 variables taken into account with exposure to heat. She says 70% is based on humidity levels, UV index is around 20%, and temperature around 10%. Construction continues on the new Agri-Food Hub and Trade Centre at Exhibition Park. BCN's Angela Stewart caught up with the CEO of Lethbridge and District Exhibition to get an update on the build and to see how much money this new facility will bring to our local economy.
As you can see, the major components of the building over my shoulder are in place.
Workers are well into construction on this massive new trade centre, which officials with Exhibition Park believe will vastly change visitor economy in southern Alberta.
It is a trade centre unlike what we have had here previously, that will actually be able to bring the provincial audience, the national audience, and the international audience here to southern Alberta to focus on the natural advantages that already exist here.
The project budget for this venue in 2020, when it was given the green light, was capped at $70.6 million. And Mike Workington with Lethbridge and District Exhibition says they remain on budget.
We're obviously looking at as many cost savings efforts as we can right now, looking at where we can minimize the budget escalations that we've seen, as everyone is seeing.
Workington says the last 2 years have made for quite a challenging time, but are managing the hurdles as they come.
It is a challenging time to do a construction project across the board, and so we're managing those best we can.
Pre-construction estimates were at about $90 million annually in economic impact, something Workington says are conservative numbers.
The opportunity that we've seen already, an influx of interest in what we're doing here and what Southern Alberta has, from an investment standpoint, but as well as from a visitor economy standpoint, has the opportunity to drive that number much, much higher.
And with Whoop Up Days just around the corner, construction will still be taking place, forcing some of the major concerts to be scaled back.
The big difference this year for Whoop Up Days is that we won't have the major concerts that we've had in the past because we just don't have a place to do them properly.
Well, the 268,000 square foot Agri-Food Hub and Trade Centre is slated to be completed for May of 2023. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
A Pincher Creek town councillor who was well known in the community has died. Wayne Elliott, who was in his 60s, passed away on July 9th while camping with his family. He was serving his 5th term as a councillor for the town before his untimely death. Pincher Creek Mayor Don Anderberg said Elliott was a stand-up guy who loved the community and hockey.
His dedication to Memorial Community Centre Skating Arena and the love of the game started Jersey Day here in Pincher Creek. Since 2017, our community have been putting on jerseys during the month of February in support of the arena, Hockeyville, and Kids in Sport. Wayne always dropped off extra jerseys for those who needed one to borrow, and even wore his jersey on the beach in Jamaica.
No official cause of death was mentioned. Now, the flag at Pincher Creek Town Hall has been lowered, and a moment of silence will take place during the next council meeting on July the 25th. Former Alberta Children's Services Minister Rebecca Schultz is running to become the new leader of the UCP. She says she really has what it takes to unite the Conservatives and is our new premier. Schultz also says when it comes to health care, she has a pretty solid plan.
Primary care has to be a priority in terms of how we recruit physicians, coming up with innovative and unique ways to get more young people from rural communities getting into med school and coming back and serving as a family doc in their local community. I think there is a lot that can be done there. And working with different areas across the province, because the needs in Lethbridge may not be the same as in Bonnyville, for example, right? So we have a really good opportunity ahead of us to work with those communities and get more family docs in the system.
Catch the full in-depth interview with UCP leadership hopeful Rebecca Schultz coming up after Business News. And by the way, the UCP will choose its new leader on October the 6th. BC Premier John Horgan says Canada's premiers who are meeting in Victoria this week want Ottawa to step up to address gaps in healthcare costs. Premiers have called on the Trudeau Liberals to increase healthcare funding from 22% to at least 35%.
What Canadians want us to do is to sit down like adults and figure out how we resurrect publicly funded health care. Patient-centered care is where we need to get to. In order to do that, we need to have a human resource strategy right across the country so that Quebec is not poaching from BC, BC is not poaching from Manitoba. We have a national plan to recruit and retain and train the next generation of healthcare workers, whether they be social workers, nurse practitioners, registered nurses, surgeons, GPs. The whole continuum of care needs to be revisited, and now is the time to do that.
10 premiers have jumped on board Alberta's constitutional challenge of Bill C-69. Premier Jason Kenney calls C-69 the No More Pipelines Act. Political reporter Brian Lilly says even a Liberal premier wants to see it overturned federally.
All 10 premiers from all different political stripes, including, Andrew Furey in Newfoundland is a close political ally of Trudeau, and he's taking on a central piece of Trudeau's environmental legislation. This bill was described as a wrecking ball by the Alberta Court of Appeal when they struck it down in May. The language used by the Court of Appeal is striking, it is strong, but it is also incredibly accurate when it comes to provincial jurisdiction, and that's why the premiers are joining in.
Catch the full interview with Brian Lilly, who will also discuss why the Trudeau Liberals want our farmers using much less fertilizer. That interview is coming up in the second half of our program. Up to 400 new electric vehicle chargers are being promised for both Saskatchewan and Manitoba. The federal government is spending $2.5 million to support the installation of chargers in public places, workplaces, and in apartment complexes. The announcement is part of a national plan to encourage people to switch to electric vehicles. Researchers at New York University are trying something new when it comes to animal to human transplants. They're removing hearts from genetically modified pigs and testing them in 2 brain-dead patients. Now, please take note that some of the images you're about to see may seem a little unsettling.
The reason to do this is, as I said, one is you never learn from one procedure. And 2, by giving us a more controlled setting, we can study this in much more detail and in much more depth than would be otherwise possible in a human. Because you can't keep subjecting a live human to, repeated procedures at all hours of the day.
We did this transplant exactly the way that we would do a human organ transplant. In other words, we sent a team to where the donor was, in this case was a pig, and brought the heart back. It was over 1,000 miles away, and sewed it in and did everything just exactly the way that we would do a regular transplant without using an experimental pump, device or experimental drugs.
When we took the clamp off and we restored blood flow to the heart and when it started beating, I've done this for 20 plus years. It was just unbelievable. I mean, it's just like you stand there in awe.
Police say 2 people were killed and 3 others were wounded in several pre-dawn shootings at 6 7-Eleven stores in Southern California. Police say they're searching for a single suspect in at least 3 of the shootings. Officials say criminals typically know that robberies at convenience stores rarely yield large amounts of money, especially during the overnight hours, which is why the alleged suspect may have hit so many of the convenience stores. Firefighters in California gained ground against a wildfire that is posing a severe threat to a grove of giant sequoias and a small community in Yosemite National Park. An incident update said the Washburn fire was only around 22% contained.
We did some burning in the grove in 2017, so things are looking pretty good in here, and we just hope to continue that way.
This is the time of year when many of us think of summer holidays and even sending our kids to summer camps. While a number of the staff with the Christian charity Mercy Projects in Ukraine were forced to leave their homes, they decided to take their summer camp ministry to Hungary, where many young people were displaced. As GNA's Peter Wooding explains, many young lives were dramatically impacted by these vacation Bible schools.
Young Ukrainian refugees who are displaced across Hungary were able to enjoy Bible summer camps recently thanks to a team from the Christian charity Mercy Projects, many of whom were forced to flee their homes in Ukraine themselves. The camps, which took place near Budapest, included plenty of fun and games, masterclasses on a range of subjects, barbecues and chapel time, where they had the opportunity to hear a gospel message and receive Ukrainian Bibles. When the war first began, Mercy Project's camp coordinator Jana Glushko made the difficult decision to flee her home in Kyiv with her 3 children and leave her husband behind to come to Hungary. But she believes God will use these camps to demonstrate the love of Christ.
Зрозуміла, що любов Бога, як зрозуміла, для мене це стало більше таким близьким.
I made this decision to show God's love through actions, like even if it is without words, like wherever I go. And here it's also my decision just to show God's love to them, to kids, by just loving them, show acceptance. I consider it like God's touches in their lives.
Team members from the UK and USA also helped to run the camps, including Mercy Project Sponsor Relations Coordinator Paula Thompson from California.
Our staff here in Ukraine, they were rescued out of the Kyiv area, and what they said was, well, if we can't do camps in Ukraine, why can't we do camps here in Hungary? We will connect. And they did through social media. They connected with families in the area from Ukraine, and it's just been fantastic. The kids are all loving being together. They're loving it here, and they're having a good time.
And these young Ukrainians shared what the camp meant to them.
I like in camp because I have there new friends.
Here is so much good games, fun. Very good, very fun camp. I like this camp because I have new friends in this camp.
I like this camp because I meet very interesting people which come here for different countries. This is UK and USA.
It is the most happy moment in my life.
So as these young lives have been impacted this summer, the Mercy Project's team will continue to do all they can to help many more people despite being displaced by the war themselves. Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance, Budapest, Hungary.
NASA unveiled a new batch of images from its powerful James Webb Space Telescope on Tuesday. The first image was a collection of various galaxies that went deeper into the cosmos than humanity has ever seen. It also included a foamy blue and orange shot of a dying star. Images were also taken of Carina Nebula, one of the very bright stellar nurseries in the sky, which astronomers say is located around 7,600 light years away. The $10 billion telescope is named after James Webb, an American official who was the second administrator of NASA. He led the space agency during many of the Apollo missions of the 1960s. It's pretty amazing, wow. Well, we also had another amazing day weather-wise here in southwestern Alberta. A great day for getting out, enjoying some fun in the sun. And those hot temperatures will continue this week. A complete look at the weather picture is on deck. Well, it was another nice day to maybe load up on the sunscreen or cool off in a nice air-conditioned facility. It was pretty hot in Lethbridge. Tonight, it should be mainly clear with a low near 14 degrees. Wednesday, there's a slight chance of showers developing with a high near 31. Thursday, the clouds should clear out and we should see high near 30. Friday, sunny and hot again with a high expected near 31. Saturday, lots of sunshine with a high of 32. Sunday, sunny with a high of 30. Monday, cooling off slightly under a mainly clear sky with a high near 27 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 25 degrees with an average low of 10. The highest temperature was set back in 1964 at 36 degrees. And the record low was 5 degrees set back in 2008. The sun rose at 5:37 and set at 9:37. Let's see how Wednesday is shaping up across the country now. It should be mainly sunny at 21 degrees in Victoria, just a few clouds at 21 as well for Vancouver. There was a heat warning at the Stampede City in Calgary today. Wednesday, a slight chance of showers developing with a high of 31. A chance of showers as well for Edmonton with a high near 23. It should be mainly sunny at 31 degrees in Regina. Sweltering hot and 35 degrees for Saskatoon on Wednesday. In Winnipeg, expect lots of sunshine and a high of 28. Now in the central part of the country, it should be mainly cloudy with light showers and a high of 20 in Toronto, clearing at 23 degrees in Ottawa, just a few clouds at 26 for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect light showers at 27 in Fredericton, showers or drizzle and 28 degrees in Halifax, light showers at 26 in Charlottetown, and in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 24 on Wednesday. Officials with Via Rail and its union Unifor announced a tentative deal struck just ahead of the deadline that would have seen around 2,400 workers walk off the job. Via says the deal, which has to be ratified by the union, will be retroactive to the beginning of this year and in effect until the end of 2024. Details of the new contract were not released. Unifor says they will be once the deal is ratified by members. Now, with the strike averted, Via Rail noted that the tentative agreements give traveling Canadians a break from the uncertainty of a possible shutdown. The Conference Board of Canada is not predicting an economic contraction this year, but it cautions the risks are creeping up. In its new two-year outlook, it expects economic growth to average 3.5% this year and 2.6% in 2023. That is down from earlier projections of 4% and 3.3%. The board's forecast comes as central banks around the world hike interest rates in an effort to curb soaring inflation. The Bank of Canada is set to make its next interest rate announcement on Wednesday. Air Canada and Emirates are calling their new agreement a deal that will offer more options for travelers on their networks. The two carriers signed a partnership agreement that will establish a code-share relationship this year. The airlines say they will also establish reciprocal frequent flyer benefits and reciprocal lounge access for qualifying customers. Daily passenger numbers for the summer are being capped at London's Heathrow Airport. Airlines are being told to stop selling tickets as soaring travel demand and staff shortages have created travel chaos. Britain's busiest airport says it is setting a limit of 100,000 passengers that it can handle each day through September the 11th. The restriction is likely to result in more canceled flights, even after airlines already slashed thousands of flights from their summer schedules. Booming demand for summer travel after 2 years of COVID-19 restrictions has overwhelmed European airports that laid off thousands of staff during the height of the pandemic. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 138 points in the day to finish at 18,678. The Dow was down 192 points to 30,981. The S&P 500 was down 35 points to 3818. And the Nasdaq was down 107 on the day to 11,264. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $8.25 on the day to $95.84 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 26 cents to $6.16 US. Gold was up 19 cents to $17.26.19 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $18.94 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.52 per bushel. Barley's at $8.71. Canola's at $18.89, and corn is at $11.15 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was up 53 cents to $136.68. Feeder cattle August contract was up $4.70 to $179.58, and lean hogs July contract was up 45 cents to $113.60. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 76.79 US. Recapping one of our top stories, police have charged a 37-year-old Lethbridge man in connection with a shooting at one of our city's tent encampment sites. Nathan Parker, Spear Chief, faces a wide variety of charges, including aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, and discharge of a firearm with intent to endanger life. A 33-year-old man was shot in the leg. He was taken to hospital, treated, and has since been released. Many more Canadian premiers have joined forces with Alberta Premier Jason Kenney in challenging the constitutionality of the Trudeau Liberals' Bill C-69, or as Kenney calls it, the No More Pipelines Act. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have details for us shortly. But first, here's a look at some of the special events taking place right here in southwestern Alberta.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Lethbridge's City Light Church and The Gate are partnering together to host a powerful night of worship with Canadian Christian songwriter and anointed worship leader Brian Dirksen. This special event is taking place Saturday, July 16th at City Light Church, beginning at 7 p.m. Seating is limited. Tickets are $25 and are available for purchase at eventbrite.com. Simply search Brian Dirksen. All are welcome. For more information, visit citylightchurch.ca/events or go to thegate.org/what's happening. Lethbridge Sport Council's Outdoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Tuesdays behind Nicholas Sharon Arena and Thursdays alternating between Henderson Lake Park and Legacy Park from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Fertilizer is essential to our economy and our farmers, and it's also become a real hot button topic here in Canada. The Trudeau government is trying to get farmers to use less fertilizer with their climate change plans. To discuss this in more detail is political reporter Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, why do the Liberals appear to view fertilizer in such a negative way?
They're concerned about something that comes out of the fertilizer, and that's nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. They say that it's been rising far too quickly, especially as farmers have moved to more synthetic fertilizer. Fertilizer use has gone up dramatically in Canada over the last several decades, really starting to spike in 2005, but it's also meant higher yield, so more food. Cheaper food for Canadians here at home, more food to feed a growing world population. And right now we've got how much of Europe's breadbasket is sitting there unable to leave the grain elevators in Ukraine because, well, they're being blockaded. You know, Ukraine and Russia are major suppliers of both fertilizer, but also agricultural goods, as is Canada. And there's going to be a lot of food shortages, especially in poorer parts of the world. But the Trudeau government's pushing ahead with this. They're calling it a voluntary 30% reduction. But farmers are worried that eventually it will become mandatory. Now, if you've seen any of the farm protests that have taken over large parts of the Netherlands, that's based off of the same policy, but a much stricter one. But it should give farmers here in Canada and families that just want to be able to put food on the table pause for concern. The Rutte government in Holland has mandated a 50% reduction in nitrous oxide, but also a 50% reduction in ammonia. They want the livestock population to go down dramatically. I can see in the not too distant future that becoming part of the Trudeau government's policy. Everything is focused on climate change. If that means higher gas prices, if that means more hardship for families, if that means higher food prices, as long as it's for the greater good of climate change, it doesn't seem to matter. So farm groups have been pushing back against this. They say, look, we don't need to use less fertilizer as a whole. We can use it better. And the farming community is showing that they are using it better. Every farmer I've talked to about this for stories I've written says, I only use as much as I need. It's an expensive input, if not the most expensive input on many farms, depending on your operation. So they're not overusing, they're being diligent in it. And yes, everyone can improve best farming practices, but on an intensity scale where you measure how much fertilizer produces so much crop, Canada fares very well around the world. We can showcase that, show other countries how to do that rather than punish our own farmers, but the government seems intent on the latter action.
So let's circle back to the livestock for just a moment here, Brian. You say that some of the politicians in Ottawa want to see less livestock. Is this because they're concerned about methane gases being emitted from some of our cattle?
Mainly cattle, but also hog. When you start reading the literature, and sometimes you have to go into, papers from the United Nations or other groups that are pushing a similar agenda, and you have to look and say, okay, what else are they going for? And the thing that might be protecting livestock producers in this country right now is that the really hardcore zealots also want to go after pork. We know that cattle is primarily Alberta and Saskatchewan, a decent chunk here in Ontario, but it's not big in Quebec, except for dairy. So the huge presence of the dairy operations may actually help. The cattle, the huge impact of dairy operations in Quebec may help the cattle producers in Alberta, but so will the hogs. Hogs produce less methane than cattle, but they're still on the hit list of the zealots that think that we need to have fewer animals and fewer people so that we can have a greener planet.
Wow. Brian, the Rogers outage last week is still making headlines. It's also making business and political waves, in addition to some pretty angry customers. Ottawa is jumping on this issue. Is this serious or just maybe political posturing?
I'd say it's mostly serious, but of course, with anything like this, there's going to be a bit of political posturing. I woke up last Friday. I have a regular Friday morning radio hit just after 8 a.m. local time. Wait a minute, the phone's not working. Oh, wait, the internet's out. Did I forget to pay a bill? What's happening here? And then I don't know if you saw the scenes, Hal. I don't know what it was like near you, but people standing outside Timmy's windows, outside of Starbucks windows with their phones up against, just trying to get a signal. And it just went on and no explanation. So yes, a lot of angry customers. I was outside the Rogers headquarters here in Toronto. It's just down the street from my office. A lot of angry protests there. Francois Philippe Champagne, who's the industry minister and a guy I've told you before, you watch for him to be one of the people looking to replace Trudeau when he decides to leave. He's a smart political guy. So yeah, there's real measures that he wants to put in place, but there's also the political angle. He was smart to jump on this because Canadians are angry, but it's also a sensible approach, telling all of the big network operators, we need you to have redundant backup. Look at the things that were shut down because of the Rogers operation. You didn't have to be a Rogers customer like I am to be affected. You wanted to pay with your debit card. Good luck on Friday. That was affecting restaurants, hairdressers, grocery stores. I walked into a McDonald's at one point to get free Wi-Fi before I got to the office, and McDonald's is saying cash or credit only. This was a huge economic impact. One of the stores near me had a sign saying cash only, no lottery tickets. I wonder what the impact was on the lottery sales. It just goes on and on. 911 systems in different part of the country impacted. So Philippe Champagne, smart of him to say that there's got to be redundancy, smart of him to come out and sound angry and channel the anger that Canadians were feeling towards Rogers and their executive office. They've got to figure something out to make sure that, you can't say this will never happen again, but if it does, that there's a backup plan. When you look at how connected we are to the internet now, we can't allow this sort of thing to go on unanswered.
Brian, here in the West, Canada's premiers have been meeting in Victoria, BC, beautiful Victoria, and healthcare is a major issue. Will provinces get the extra funding increase they've been calling for?
Probably not. This has been a regular occurrence, and it's been a very specific one and also a united one for a long time. Look, cynical political watchers will say, well, the premiers, they get together every year and they just ask for money. Yeah, and there's some truth to that. But the last several years, we have seen a unity that I haven't seen before from the premiers in not only having a very specific ask. They say, look, the feds give 22% of the current healthcare funding. We need you to go to 35% to be a sustainable partner, but also the unity. These are liberal premiers, New Democrat premiers, progressive conservative premiers. We've got the Legault's CAQ party in Quebec, which is very popular, about to be reelected in Trudeau's home province, UCP. Every political stripe is represented saying, look, this is a problem. I just don't see that Trudeau's going to go ahead. But their unity is allowing them not to be pushed around. When Trudeau came in, by the way, he campaigned against Stephen Harper's so-called cut. Harper proposed in about 2014 that he was going to lower the annual increase from 6% to 3%. Trudeau called it a cut, but it wasn't supposed to be implemented till 2017. So Trudeau's the one that implemented what he still campaigns against as don't elect conservatives, they'll cut healthcare. But what he was able to do in his early years was the premiers weren't united, and he was able to pick them apart one by one, offering them bad deals that he would have denounced when he was in opposition and get them to sign on to them. They're standing together, and that gives some hope that they might get something, even if it's not the 35% they're asking for.
Now, Brian, speaking of premiers being united, we received word that every province in Canada is joining Alberta in their constitutional challenge of Bill C-69, or as Alberta Premier Jason Kenney refers to it, the No More Pipelines Bill. How significant is this?
Incredibly significant. I've been covering the Supreme Court for years. Provinces are always taking the federal government to court. Alberta and Quebec seem to relish in doing that. There's more that unites Alberta and Quebec in some ways than a lot of people realize, and taking on Ottawa and their centralizing power is one of them. But to have all 10 premiers from all different political stripes, including, Andrew Furey in Newfoundland is a close political ally of Trudeau, and he's taking on a central piece of Trudeau's environmental legislation. This bill was described as a wrecking ball by the Alberta Court of Appeal when they struck it down in May. The language used by the Court of Appeal is striking It is strong, but it is also incredibly accurate when it comes to provincial jurisdiction. And that's why the premiers are joining in. They realize that if they allow this to stand, and hopefully the Supreme Court does not allow it to stand, doesn't say, no, Alberta Court of Appeal, you're wrong, this bill gets to stick around. If it does get to stick around, there is no project that the federal government can't say, we want to look into that. The Constitution is quite clear, whether it's natural resources or infrastructure projects, something that is just within the province, the feds don't have a say, but they want to have a say. So here in Ontario, for example, we just had an election where Doug Ford won handily. He won every seat in an area where he wants to build a new 400 series highway. And the Liberals have used this Bill C-69 to call for their own environmental assessment. There's a provincial one that has already happened, but the feds want to stop this highway. I think after the election, they may not, but what about the next project? Maybe the next project's a hospital. Maybe it's a hydroelectric development in BC or in Quebec. And they're going to pick and choose based on the whims of the federal cabinet, not even real legislative or regulatory authority. Federal cabinet gets to make these decisions. That's not how a country should work. So good on the premiers for doing this.
The drama around Patrick Brown being ousted from the Conservative Party of Canada leadership race began about a week ago, and it really hasn't simmered down much, has it? What's the latest?
Yeah, it started about 8:45 here in Toronto time on Tuesday night. After you and I had spoken, I started getting text messages saying there's a secret meeting happened to boot Patrick Brown. And of course, we found out just before 11 Toronto time or just before 9 your time that, yes, it had happened. It was a shocker to everyone involved. And the drama hasn't stopped. At first, we were told the party wouldn't say anything. That couldn't stand because you can't throw out someone who's that prominent in the leadership campaign. You know, it's not someone that's going to finish sixth. So they had to say something. They couldn't just say, this is serious, trust us. Eventually, they gave some details. Then a woman came forward, said, I'm the whistleblower. That hasn't cleared things up at all. Brown's hired one of the best litigation lawyers in the country, Marie Heinen. She infamously got Jian Ghomeshi off of the bizarre charges that he was facing a few years ago. She defended Vice Admiral Mark Norman when the Trudeau government was railroading him and trying to hang a crime around his neck after decades of distinguished military service. So he's got the best litigator on hand. And now the party, which originally said there's no appeal, said, well, we don't know what the right venue is for the appeal. And we've hired our own outside lawyers. So much drama going on. Bottom line, look, I think that if it stands, and it's likely to stand, that Brown is out, I think this definitely solidifies Pierre Poilievre winning, quite possibly on the first ballot. He's the most likely one to take advantage of that. But ultimately, the person that is happiest right now is Justin Trudeau, because instead of talking about all the problems at the airports, the passport offices, the fertilizer, there's been a lot of time spent talking about problems inside the Conservative leadership. And the last thing that the Conservatives need are swing voters who voted for Trudeau last time or the time before and are kind of not feeling like he's delivering right now, looking around and saying, yeah, these guys can't deliver basic services, but you guys have trouble running leadership campaigns and elections. Not sure we want to let you run the country. They need to clean this up one way or another and do it quickly.
So are other campaigns trying to poach some of Patrick Brown's supporters right now?
Yes, they absolutely are. And, it's not just Jean Charest trying to get people. Poilievre campaigns in there as well, trying to get some of the organizers, on the ground organizers. These are people who can go in and make sure that they rally the troops to vote. It's a mail-in ballot. And, people might think, well, you don't need a get out the vote team like you do in a general election, but you do, because the ballot comes in, sits on your kitchen counter, sits on your kitchen table, gets put away on the desk in the office. Oh, I forgot to vote. No, you need people out there in the community, whether it's a local community, an ethnic community, a religious community, reminding people and driving them not only to vote, but to vote for your candidate. So they're all trying to poach Brown's organizers while his status is up in the air. And they're all trying to poach his voters as well, because, if you take him at face value, like you take Poilievre at face value, he sold over 150,000 memberships. That would normally win you a leadership race on the first ballot. So he's drummed up a lot of support. Those votes are going to be up for grabs? Do you want to just let them sit there and make up their own mind, or do you want a challenge for them? They're all challenging for them now.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Alberta's United Conservative Party leadership race is heating up. Now, the party will be choosing its new leader to replace Premier Jason Kenney on October the 6th. One of those candidates vying for the premier seat is Rebecca Schultz, who left her UCP cabinet post as Minister of Children's Services to enter the leadership race. Rebecca, welcome to Bridge City News.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So what sparked your interest in running to become the new leader of the UCP and potentially the new Premier of Alberta?
You know, I just feel so strongly about the future of our province, and I know that the success of our United Conservative Party is key to the future of our province. I think that, you know, as we travel across the province, and what I've been hearing from people is that there are a number of things going really well right now. Our economy is good. There are lots of jobs. Unemployment is down. You know, but people also want to see a slightly different change in tone when it comes to the government, and they want to make sure that the government hears their voices, that they've got a voice at the decision-making table. And, you know, I think we really need to stay focused on being hopeful and optimistic for our future, but also recognizing that people have some very real concerns right now, whether that be affordability or healthcare or education. And so, you know, that's really the voice that I try to bring to the table. I want to be completely honest. I want to show humility, not just talk about it, admit when we've made some mistakes, and show Albertans that we're here to work for them, to listen to them, and that we hear, you know, what's top of mind for them as well.
You know, you just mentioned kind of why card-carrying members should vote for you, but what's one thing specifically that makes you stand out or different from all the other candidates in the field?
You know, I would say it is my ability to communicate with people. I think we need somebody going into that next election who can, in fact, take on Rachel Notley and the NDP. That is our opponent as Conservatives. It's not each other, even though we've been through a very difficult couple of years. I think people want to see that shift in tone. You know, I chose Alberta. I'm originally from Saskatchewan. And so when people say 4 years of an NDP government was really hard here in Alberta, I say try 16. You know, any room I go into across Alberta, there are a number of people who came from another province or another place, and generally speaking, they came to opportunity. They came to Alberta for opportunity, for that promise that if you can work hard, you can be whoever and whatever you want to be and chart your own path. And I think people are looking for that optimism, that different tone, that ability to resonate with people right across the political spectrum. As you know, as Conservatives, I would say we always talk about the center right, but show people that we can be a Conservative government that also just uses good old common sense and, of course, compassion when we make decisions.
Now, Rebecca, the UCP says it's a big tent party, but it appears to be a little fractured right now in that tent with a lot of animosity. What will it take to really unite the Conservatives once again here in Alberta?
That's a really good question, and it's one I get a lot. You know, it starts with our team. We have an amazing team of MLAs right across this province that are hardworking and smart and dedicated. And I know that they want to be united. And like many party members, I would say there were times where they felt like their voice just wasn't heard at the table. You know, and I would say when talking about my team, I spent a couple of days last week with your MLA, who is a strong voice for Lethbridge. You know, at the table, absolutely no question, Emily Newdorf. But, you know, it's for me, it's building on the talents and strengths of the team. It's not about any one person. And so making sure that our team feels heard is priority number one. My other commitment was to travel to every single one of the 87 constituencies, knock on doors in every single riding, make sure that I'm meeting with every single CA board president and the volunteers to make sure that our grassroots party members know that in me, they will have somebody who will always listen and hear their concerns, hear where they're coming from. And I don't think that people expect to agree with every decision a government is going to make. Largely, the concerns sometimes are around how decisions have been made and how they're communicated. And so that's really the approach that I'm going to take.
Yeah, because some MLAs said, you know what, we're forced always to toe the party line. Our voices are not being heard. So how would you approach that that problem and that issue as Premier of Alberta.
Yep. And, again, it does start with bringing our team together. And yes, we are a party. It's a party system. And I think there is always that question of, we are the party of different opinions. We value things like freedom of speech and diversity of thoughts and ideas. We want people to hold the values that they hold dear, and we respect those differences. Sometimes I joke that that's what makes conservative politics a little bit messy, but it's also one of the things that we need to continue to hold as one of our most important values. That said, we still have to show discipline. And so the question is, where do we have those discussions? How as a team can we come together and say, look, we are always going to value different opinions and different thoughts and different perspectives, but what, as a team, does discipline look like to us? And make sure that, we come to that as a team and know what is that line that we're not going to cross, and what's going to happen if that line is in fact crossed. And I think, largely speaking, people want to see that there's one set of rules for everybody. They don't want me to come and tell everybody what to do. That's not my approach. I'm not a top-down approach to leadership kind of person. But I think our team really does have to have that conversation around, what does discipline look like? Because we're going to need it as we head into the next election. How do we stay on message, on track, and still make sure everybody's voices are heard?
We don't know exactly what lies ahead with any future COVID-19 outbreaks, but everyone seems to have a different opinion on how this should really be handled. Are you in favor of vaccine mandates or lockdowns? Or are you the mindset that we should not see any more lockdowns in our province, which has really hurt small business owners?
I would say this. Throughout the pandemic, and I mean, those sitting on the sidelines, or even those of us looking back now, hindsight is 2020, we learned a lot of things. We were faced with something that none of us ever could have expected, and none of us had ever been through before. And I would say this, throughout especially the last couple of months of the pandemic, but with the various waves, and we saw obviously things changing from one wave to the next, we know a lot more now. We know that we have to address issues within our hospital system. We have to address capacity needs when it comes to the healthcare system. We've heard loud and clear, people want freedom of choice and autonomy over the decisions that they make. And I often, again, say we've spent, 2 years going through something very hard. We have been through something that has been so divisive, and I believe we should respect where people are coming from and focus on also the overall well-being and mental health of people. I mean, especially of kids. That's what I was working in before resigning to jump into this race. But we saw that the health restrictions had a very real impact, especially on kids and youth, but really Albertans right across the province. And, I think Albertans are looking for us to say, you know what, we hear you. We know that has had a significant impact, and we need to look at the issues around the healthcare system and hospital capacity to address future waves.
Now, you want to put in place what you refer to as affordability actions. The first one is the Alberta Activity Grant. What is this really all about?
That actually came out of the Child and Youth Wellbeing Review. We heard, again, health restrictions had an impact on kids and families. We need to prioritize the mental health and well-being of Albertans, especially of young kids, and help them get back into activities. I mean, whether that be piano or hockey or soccer or dance, things that kids are passionate about at a time where parents are really struggling with affordability. I mean, I think of when I was growing up, I had amazing parents and a wonderful family, but I remember my parents making those really tough decisions. And I know there are parents who lay awake at night thinking about how they are going to pay their electricity bills and put gas in their car, and also help get their kids in things that they can be passionate about, and that will improve their overall well-being and mental health. So, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we can control. We don't control financial, federal monetary policy, but we do control what we can do with this surplus and direct it in a way that goes directly to parents and kids, supports the choices they make. I believe in parent choice. And so as opposed to necessarily funding one program or the other, I think those dollars should go to parents to help them out with their kids and their families. And also on the details of what exactly that looks like, I said, that's something I want to take to caucus too. It's not all about me and my ideas. I want my colleagues to weigh in on exactly how we're going to do that. But I think affordability, and it's not just I think, that's the number one thing I hear right across the province. Mental health and well-being, that's important too. So that was one of our first commitments as well.
Now, you've also proposed to implement an Alberta small business tax holiday. How would that work?
Well, and that's been raised by a number of organizations. I know our business tax is low, but we also have to recognize that the last 2 years have been really hard on small businesses throughout the pandemic. I know that there's been a lot of uncertainty. And a lot of small business owners have said, look, my business really struggled over the last 2 years. I absolutely believe that these entrepreneurs are at the heart of the entrepreneurial spirit that we all talk about. These are folks that drive our economy. They hire people in our local communities right across the province. And I think starting with the 2% small business tax holiday is an excellent way to show them, first, that they're valued, second, that we completely understand what they've been through in the last couple of years, but third, that they are absolutely vital to our province's economic growth and recovery.
Rebecca, let's chat about healthcare for just a moment here. What really needs to be done to change and increase physician availability, decrease wait times, and increase hospital bed capacity? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and the family doc situation is something I did hear a lot about in Lethbridge. I know the Minister of Health, Minister Copping, has been working really hard on that as well, just to attract new doctors. And I know your MLA Newdorf, has raised that as well and was able to update a number of people on the number of doctors that are now signing contracts and coming to Lethbridge specifically. But this is an issue that we hear right across the province. We need to make sure, that we have access to family doctors either in or near your local community. And I grew up in super small town Saskatchewan, and so I know the struggles that people face in rural communities, and especially when it comes to access to healthcare. Primary care has to be a priority in terms of how we recruit physicians, coming up with innovative and unique ways to get more young people from rural communities getting into med school and coming back and serving as a family doc in their local community. I think there is a lot that can be done there. And working with different areas across the province, because the needs in Lethbridge may not be the same as in Bonnyville, for example, right? So we have a really good opportunity ahead of us to work with those communities and get more family docs in the system. I think that a lot of our answers, we obviously know that we've got a Ernst & Young report that identified a lot of kind of the red tape within the system. We know that we invest more than other provinces per capita, but yet we don't have better outcomes. I don't think we need more reports. I think, honestly, the answer lies with our frontline healthcare professionals. Doctors, nurses have identified not just middle management, but layers of bureaucracy and simple changes that could be made within the healthcare system to really focus on allowing frontline workers to do what they do best and really transform the thinking in our healthcare system around having the patient at the heart of it and not a process or policy.
Now, what about education? There's pressure from the teachers' union to change their curriculum, to decrease class sizes, to put less money into private schools, maybe even homeschooling. Which direction do you want to see our education system go?
Oh, that's a great question. I care a lot about education. I really do. My kids are 7 and 4. And I think right across this province, people want to make sure that we have a world-class education system for our kids. I believe in parent choice. I believe that, parents can make that best decision for them in terms of the type of education that works best for their child and for their family. And we need to maintain that. We have a long history in that front, no question. That said, I think curriculum, yes, there are a few things we've got great feedback on. English, math, financial literacy, those are all really great things, that we get a lot of positive feedback on. Continue moving in that path. There are some areas, though, where we missed the mark, and we need to rebuild some trust in that process and get some feedback and show parents and teachers across the province that we're listening, we've heard them, and that is definitely going to be a priority of mine. I also feel, one of the things I hear a lot is around class sizes, as you mentioned, and having teachers and kids in the classroom at the heart of the decisions we make and the funding decisions that are made. And we hear a lot about the government saying that school divisions have local authority, and school division saying government hasn't given us enough funding. I am a problem solver, first and foremost, creative problem solver. And I think we need to get to the table and look at, where's the money going? I mean, I'm from Calgary, as you mentioned, and, we have a school division that had a report that identified if we funded school divisions like others, or if the school division ran like some of the other major divisions, that we would have far lower class sizes. So my question is, how can we make sure that we're focusing on kids and teachers in the classroom? I made a commitment that I want to make sure we have more EAs hired. Absolutely. I think that helps with teachers, right? It helps bring down the stress level. It gives them some support in the classroom. It's good for kids, whether kids, that are struggling with mental health, or struggling in class, or have unique or challenging needs. We need to make sure that those supports are there. And I also do want to pilot some very true wraparound services to address the mental health needs that really respects that schools are the hubs of a community. And for really vulnerable kids and families, that's going to be where they need to get those supports.
Rebecca Schultz is a candidate in the UCP leadership race. The party will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me anytime.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.